and welcome. You're watching DD India, and a comprehensive day-long rolling coverage begins ahead of India's interim budget, which is set to be presented by the country's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman at 11 a.m. India time or 5:30 in the morning GMT in the Indian Parliament. This is the last budget of the Modi government 2.0 ahead of the parliamentary elections due in May this year. I'm Munman Bhattacharya.
And I'm Gautam Roy, and not just India, but the entire world is looking at what the Indian FM rolls out today and how it will keep the momentum going on the kind of economic growth path India has set for itself in recent years. For the last 3 years, India's GDP has remained on the 7+% growth path, and though interim budgets are usually not used for making any big ticket policy announcements or launching of schemes, there is a lot of anticipation in the air. We'll be getting to all that very shortly, but first our headlines.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is set to present the interim budget. It is the last budget before the country's parliamentary elections due in May.
Just ahead of the interim budget, the GST numbers for January 2024 come in at 172,129 crore rupees, 10.4% year-on-year higher than the collection made in January last year.
And the nation's chief economic advisor tells DD India in an exclusive conversation that India will remain on its high growth path due to reforms carried out by the government over the last 9 years.
Well, the countdown to the Union Interim Budget 2024 has begun. India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Interim Budget 2024 in the lower house of Parliament at 11 a.m. local time today. That's 5:30 a.m. GMT.
It will be her 6th budget presentation as Finance Minister and will be the last budget of the current Lok Sabha. Like the previous 3 full Union budgets, Interim Budget 2024 will also be delivered in a paperless form. The full Union budget will be presented once the new government is elected following the general elections, which are due in April-May this year.
And just ahead of the interim budget, Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, V. Anantha Nageswaran, in an exclusive conversation with DD India, has told that the Indian economy remains in a good shape and will continue to grow healthier due to measures taken by the government over the last 9/10 years, whatever you may call it.
In the previous 6 years before the pandemic, several important structural reforms have taken place. India cleaned up the balance sheets of the financial sector, especially public sector banks. The Indian government invested in public infrastructure, both physical and digital infrastructure. It enabled financial inclusion with this PM Jan Dhan Yojana program, and 55% of the new account holders are women. And then India also ensured that the digital infrastructure evolved that allowed MSMEs to be able to access finance and also tap into newer markets. So I think a combination of all these various immediate responses to the pandemic and the energy situation arising out of the conflict in Ukraine and the delayed impact of the long-term structural reforms. I should have also added the implementation of GST, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and continued focus on the ease of doing business. All these things have kept the Indian economy in good shape and in a good position to continue to grow healthily, not only as it is doing right now, but also in the years ahead.
Right, and joining us now is our correspondent Vikas Sarthi from the new Parliament, where the interim budget is going to be presented. Vikas, a very good morning to you. What is the activity that you are witnessing there? I'm sure there is a trickle right now, but very soon a lot of people will be gathered there, members of Parliament particularly, and we are waiting for that photo opportunity of the Finance Minister with her budget team.
Good morning. Right, Munmun. So not much activity as of now, but we expect that in an hour we will see MPs are coming for this crucial budget session. And before that, as we know that what has been convention that first Finance Minister will hold a meeting with officials at North Block Finance Ministry, and later on she will present a copy of budget to President of India, and then she will arrive at Parliament. There will be a photo opportunity where we will witness that Finance Minister along with MOS Finance and other secretaries, Secretary Revenue, Secretary Finance will be present at the Parliament. And later on, as usually happens, that there will be a cabinet meeting before just before the presentation of the interim budget. So these are expected in a short while. But as of now, not much activity here. But in an hour, we expect that we will see the usual visuals we expect from the budget session. And as far as the interim budget is concerned, Finance Minister herself said that she is not going to make major big announcements. But again, it is going to be crucial document since we are in an election year, and it also will give a view in the government's policy for the coming months, since this government is confident that it will make a comeback again after the general election. So it will be very interesting to listen to Finance Minister. She will start addressing Lok Sabha at 11 a.m. Munmun.
Right. Now, Vikas, Gautam here. Good morning. You reminded our viewers and us about what the Finance Minister said, and she basically has tempered down all kinds of expectations and anticipations that are building up. But even Prime Minister Modi had something to say about the interim budget yesterday when this budget session started, and he said something that again perhaps gives some sort of hope to everyone who's looking at the budget for something or the other.
Good morning, Gautam. Right, so there are some constraints for Finance Minister that she cannot make major changes. Particularly, people expect that there will be some major announcement related to the tax rebate, tax slabs, and standard deductions. All these things are of particularly importance for common people. But again, there are some constraints. But as I just said, that though she has constraint, but her budget speech will certainly give a view that what will be the government's policies when the full and final budget, the full-fledged budget will be presented after a few months, after general election. What will be the tone and tenor of that budget? You can get a glimpse of that also in today's speech, Gautam.
Right, and now another correspondent, Meghna Dev, is joining us from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman's Delhi residence. Good morning, Meghna. How is the morning shaping up at the Finance Minister's residence? What is the activity that you see?
Here is a number of media persons waiting for Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to leave from her residence for the Finance Ministry, and from where we will see the photo op with the Finance Ministry officials. And obviously after that she will head to meet the President, and from there she will go to the Parliament where she is expected to attend a cabinet around 10, and after that we will have the budget speech around 11 a.m. Very importantly, what we get to know is that in some time from now she will be leaving from her residence. So basically, if I keep you with the visual here, this is her residence here in New Delhi, and she's expected to leave in a short while from now. Besides that, also there are there's a lot of buzz, and from maybe policymakers, be it analysts, be it businessmen, industry players, on their wish lists of what they would expect in this interim budget. And obviously after the government formation, the full budget will come, but definitely interim budget also hints much more at what the government is aiming at doing this financial year.
Certainly, Meghna, good portents. I can see it's still almost drizzly at the moment as well where you are, and in Delhi, which is a good portent, just like a good portent came in last evening as well in terms of the GST numbers. So the government has some amount of powder to go on as far as its revenues are concerned, and these are good signs for all those things that people are expecting. If it's relief, they can hope for that. If economists are looking at the fiscal consolidation path, going along that, staying on that glide path, that too perhaps can be one of the factors that will sustain through the entire budget speech as an expectation.
as you said, everyone's expecting according to their own sectors, for their own sectors. Very importantly, when we actually talk about a few important sectors, especially for the aspiring youngsters and the young demography is expecting more in the EV sector. The industry is also expecting more in the EV sector. We definitely have, when we actually see in the previous budgets also, the government has been going high on expenditure in terms of capex. So capital expenditure is something that the government is pushing a lot on. And this time around also, if something on the capital expenditure gets announced, it will not come as a surprise, because this has been traditionally what the government has been trying to do. Besides, we definitely see in terms of AI, digital public infrastructure, so a lot in the digital space, in the EV sector, in these emerging areas, a lot can be expected. Besides, agriculture definitely is one sector where we have been.
So focus on digital infrastructure, on physical infrastructure, on social infrastructure. Meghna, we'll keep coming back to you for more updates. Also, because we'll keep coming to you for updates as the day pans out. 11 a.m. is the time when the finance minister will be presenting her budget, an interim budget. Like you said, the expectations have been tempered there, but still anticipation is in the air. Everyone is waiting to know what is in it for them.
And the PM said that there will be some disha nirdesh, as in some guidelines for the budgets to come in.
Yes.
He said that he indicated that we will come back to pass or present the full budget.
Absolutely. Guiding lights is what we are looking forward to. Well, the gross goods and services tax, GST revenue collected in the month of January 2024 is out, and it is over 1,72,000 crore rupees, and that shows a 10.4% year-on-year growth over the revenue collected in January 2023.
Well, notably, this is the second highest monthly collection ever, and it's the third month in the current financial year in which more than 1.7 lakh crore rupees have been mopped up. The cumulative gross GST collection from April 2023 to January 2024, that's about a period of 10 months, witnessed an impressive 11.6% year-on-year growth, mopping up 16.69 lakh crore rupees.
And we've heard from the Chief Economic Advisor earlier, but he had more to say in an exclusive conversation with DD India. So let's listen in to V. Ananth Nageshwaran, India's Chief Economic Advisor, speaking on how India has improved its economy through digital infrastructure, structural reforms, ease of doing business, including the introduction of GST, which has facilitated MSMEs access to finance and new markets.
States are now seeing that their GST collections are growing faster than they used to in the pre-GST era, and it is also facilitating economic efficiency. Trucks are able to travel more distance. There is at least a 45 to 50% increase in the distance covered by trucks. Logistics costs have come down because of the abolition of octroi posts and one single tax rate, etc. So the efficiency gains of GST are flowing through. That is, of course, an indirect tax reform measure. In the direct tax measure, the government has given people the option to choose, and the corporates as well, to choose between the old tax regime and the new tax regime. They can, for individuals especially, they can move back and forth between the two regimes for every financial year. Therefore, they can choose the most optimal tax payment, most optimal tax regime that suits them. And there are also many tax administration measures taken to make payment of taxes and interaction with the tax department as non-intrusive and as smooth as possible. Much more can be done with respect to angel taxes or capital gains tax rationalization or further direct tax reforms, etc. But India today, especially for businesses, has one of the most reasonable tax structures in the world, and therefore considerable tax reform measures. Of course, the most notable one being GST introduction. Considerable tax reform measures, including tax administration reform measures, have been taken in the last 10 years.
Well, Asian markets portrayed a mixed performance on Thursday following Wall Street's downward trend influenced by the US Federal Reserve's cautious approach on the interest rate cuts. The global market, however, these markets are closely tracking India's interim budget as well, which will be presented in Indian Parliament in just a few hours.
Both Japan's indices, Nikkei 225 and Topix, declined by 0.8% and 0.78% respectively, while South Korea's Kospi was up 0.77% during the opening bells.
Wall Street's prior session saw notable declines, with the S&P 500 slipping 1.6%, Dow down 0.8%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq experiencing a sharp slide of 2.2%. The Federal Reserve, in its fourth consecutive meeting, chose to maintain current interest rates, hinting at potential future cuts unlikely before May.
Indian stock market exhibited bullish trends ahead of the Thursday's interim budget, supported by positive domestic as well as global cues. BSE Sensex surged 612.21 points on Wednesday to close at 71,752.11, while NSE's Nifty 50 index advanced 203.6 points to end the session at 21,725.7. So let's get perspective now on the upcoming interim budget. A lot of expectations at the same time, though spectacular announcements are generally not done in an interim budget. So let's get perspective. Deepshika Sikarwar, senior editor, Economic Times, is with us in the studio, and Narinder Wadhwa is joining us online. He is a stock analyst. Such a pleasure to have the two of you on such an important day. Mr. Wadhwa, to begin with you, it reminds me of what the chief economic advisor had to say in the review of the Indian economy, that India's stock market is now the fourth largest in the world in terms of market capitalization, just after Hong Kong, or doing even better than Hong Kong. What reasons do you attribute to this, and how do you expect the stock markets to perform as it opens at 9:15 this morning?
Oh, thank you for having me. Definitely, whatever was told by the chief economic advisor, we also echo that. We are the fourth largest economy. I mean, from the capital market side, and the way we are moving, and the Amrit Kal, what we are seeing in the market, and I think good time ahead for us in the capital market, and good times for the economy also.
Well, certainly. Deepshika, if I could come to you and ask you, we know what the stock analysts look for as far as the budget is concerned, and they primarily react once it's been presented and all the details are known. But as a person who's been following the economy for quite some time, what would you be looking for in terms of what Nirmala Sitharaman might have to say as far as this budget speech is concerned, keeping in mind that she's said that it's going to be a vote on account, she's tempered down all expectations, but still a lot is being expected because there are elections around the corner. And of course, the expectation is that India has been on a high growth path, 7+% over the last 3 years. And how will that be maintained?
What I'd like to say is this budget is significant from the point of view of what kind of signals she throws out, though it is a vote on account. So even from markets' perspective, I think the biggest signal that the markets are keenly watching is what she will do in terms of fiscal consolidation. So, we were in the COVID and there was an excuse, we had to spend. So now that COVID overhang is done with. We've seen good growth, good rebound. So whether she will take steps towards fiscal consolidation, those signals are the most...
We have to bear in mind that our spending at that time was quite reasonable.
Exactly. So whether how she will balance, the poll requirements. But if you've seen the record of this present government, is they really don't go in for, those splurges in terms of, poll expenditures. So I think there could be some signals on fiscal consolidation. Those would be keenly watched out for. And also, what kind of growth impulses can this budget provide in terms of, whether there would be continuous, this continued emphasis on capital expenditure. And apart from that, whether she does anything more on financial inclusion. And of course, there are expectations galore. Every constituency wants something or the other. So there is expectation of whether she will provide something for the middle class, the salary.
Because that gives more to consumers, and consumers have kept the economy going as well.
Then, of course, there has been some concern about rural stress. So whether what she does for the rural economy, agriculture sector. So those kind of things would be watched out for. And apart from that, how would she be financing? So we've not seen much happen on monetization, disinvestment. So where will the money be coming from?
The GST numbers have been helpful.
Yes, and also the direct tax collections.
Yes, tax numbers have been very good.
Over 150% over the course of the last 9 years.
But you know, non-tax revenues, especially disinvestment, haven't been like that great. So those are the things, I think, those are the signals which people would be really keenly watching.
Right. Mr. Wadhwa, I'll come to you. How have the markets responded in the past few years? Has it been a mixed bag? And what sort of a reaction do you expect today? I'm talking about budget days. Has it been a mixed bag by and large? And what kind of reactions do you expect today as the interim budget is presented? And we know that the markets are looking for stability and
continuity.
Because
there are mixed signals as well. Our domestic market yesterday closed on a high. But then if you look at the global markets, especially the American markets, the ones that give the most indication for what will be the shape of the next day, they've been down.
Yeah. So being in the market on a budget day, it's a volatile day normally for the last so many years, and especially when you know the lot of things are happening internationally also. Yesterday we see FOMC, the interest rate part. Definitely that is going to play a role in today's market. Yesterday we saw 1% uptake in the Indian stock market, and I expect that it's going to be volatile, but the bias will be on the positive side only. Although it is a vote on account, not the full budget, but we are taking it as a run-up to the main budget, and the Disha Nirdesh, as you just mentioned, and the guidance will be there. So how our economy is going to perform in next 5 years, or you know how we are going to reach the 7 trillion economy by 2030.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So Deepshika, just tell me, how do you as an economic journalist see in terms of the markets reflecting the health of the economy, because they do go up and down, but there is a generic trend line that we've seen as well from the COVID recovery period, and it's been up and up and up.
Absolutely. See, broadly, while, experts say you should not really link, but definitely markets are looking at what holds for an economy, not just
basically,
currently, but basically the future. Yeah, so markets, investors are looking at the future growth prospects of an economy, of the corporate sector in that country. So definitely, whether it is foreign investors or domestic investors, I think what we've seen in the Indian stock market is the India growth story really playing out.
Absolutely. Deepshika, also we know that we are in the backdrop of a very resilient economy. The review talks about it. We are looking at the numbers. The IMF, OECD, they've all given a thumbs up to the Indian economy. But at the same time, these are tough times globally. There are a lot of global economic uncertainties. There are issues around food security, around energy security, around supply chain overdependence. So in view of this, what are the areas that you expect the finance minister to touch upon to address these global shocks?
See, what we've seen over the past 2 years is government has taken policy measures. There have been support measures, also policy interventions to ensure that the domestic economy remains very robust. Also, fiscally, we never went overboard like the West. So the macroeconomic management was also very well managed in that sense.
Yes,
so this budget would also sort of build on these measures. It would be, I would say, a building block kind of a budget, which takes forward the agenda which has been set and builds on the measures and interventions which have been taken to spur manufacturing, to support the farm sector, to provide some support, to the vulnerable sections, which still sort of are not, we've had poverty numbers. So, but for
also
that
insulate the country from the global shocks.
The global shock. Although we will not be as insulated because we are quite part of the global economy at this juncture. But definitely some measures on those come.
Yes, and there a foreign policy also comes in, because we have been in the position where we've been able to skate, the different perspectives on different global flashpoints that we've seen in the recent past.
So strategic autonomy.
Yes, we have strategic autonomy there. But again, if I could come to you, Narendra Wadhwa, and ask you, what is a stock analyst like you looking for in the budget? Because perhaps the expectation would be that, again, if you look at the market's trend line, higher highs, higher lows, so that is maintained over the medium and the long term.
Yeah, definitely. See, what we are looking for is the path of structural reforms. What we want to see that continues, although it is a vote on account, but definitely, as you mentioned, Disha Nirdesh will be there. So more, and it's a election year also, the government would like more money in the hands of the consumer, especially the rural economy. And for that, I think more focus will be on infrastructure spending. Whatever projects are there in progress, they'll allocate much more money for that, and that will, that will percolate in the hands of the consumer, especially the rural economy. And the focus will be again what we are seeing, and would like to see that focus on digital as well as physical infrastructure taking place, and that will definitely be positive for our markets.
Do you expect, Deepshika, a lot of focus on the new and emerging sectors and also on green transition, on giving a boost to green technology, because we are now in pursuit of a target of net zero by 2070?
Absolutely, and I think Prime Minister's given an indication towards that. After coming back from the Ayodhya, the first decision that was taken was for solar power. So I think some policy interventions or some kind of support measures for solar or renewable towards green hydrogen, green energy, definitely those are expected in this budget. Or if it doesn't happen this budget, probably the full budget when it happens. But green is definitely in focus of this government and in line with your net zero target.
Okay, let's talk about the expectations of the common man as well. Because if you look at what happened in the last interim budget, which was in 2019, Piyush Goyal presented that. There was a lot for the farmers and women. There was PM Kisan that was announced, and a lot of other announcements were also made. If you go back further and look at Pranab Mukherjee, again in an interim budget, he changed the tax slabs. And it said that normally in a vote on account, you don't change tax slabs. So there are expectations, even with the finance minister saying, the current finance minister, that this will be a vote on account.
No, I think, see, it's been a precedent that you don't really tinker with a lot of, measures, because, the next government is going to present the full budget. But there is no one stopping you from announcing any measures or any policy, new schemes or,
tax
concessions.
Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, there is a lot of all-round expectations that she will do something on the taxation.
Especially the new tax regime, make it more attractive, because not too many people have been going for it. About 27%, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And apart from that, there are other measures, even for the corporate sector, the manufacturing, the lower rate for new investments in manufacturing. That ends this year, 15%. So that ends this year. So there is expectation that that would be extended. So definitely some tax by 2 years, I guess. That's the all-round expectations, but ultimately it's the finance minister who will take that call. But definitely some tax measures are likely to come about.
These speculations that we see a lot in, we've seen a lot in Economic Times as well. So just tell us, where do they really come from? Do they really come from some sources in the government, or it's just people, analysts talking, and especially people in the market industry talking?
No, as they say, never reveal your sources. But definitely, there are some quarters
in those speculations.
No, there are some quarters. You obviously work towards. You get some indicators of what the thinking is, and
from
you
the
work.
Ministries.
Yes, absolutely. So you talk to people, you talk to multiple stakeholders, and then you sort of build upon, what could be done on this.
But then do you think that this government could be focusing a lot on the rural sector? I saw a report on how domestic helps could be a focus this time around in the Economic Times as well. So considering that this is an election budget, and there are reports, there are already surveys that have been done on how the rural sector purchasing power has increased. So do you think that that is going to be a focus?
See, rural economy is going to be one of the key focus areas for the government because unless your rural economy sort of works, you can't lift the overall economy. So in the rural economy also, we've seen this, we saw very mixed signals come out. You know, there were sections which were under stress, which we saw, you know, how Manrega demand sort of increased in the year, although it's begun to come down. So definitely some kind of intervention for the rural economy. It could be...
And both for agrarian and non-agrarian.
Absolutely. It has to come. The MNREG budget will be scaled up because obviously you want to support the Awas Yojana or rural roads program. There would be support, increased support for that, because that helps create jobs in the rural
and there's specifically speculation related to PM Kisan as well, that
yes,
the
allocations might. That's the biggest speculation, which is sort of, you know, which we are here. And a lot of murmurs about that could come about because a lot of state governments have also sort of added to it. So it is likely that the center would also follow suit and do something for the farmers in terms of additional transfer.
In July.
Yeah, I think it would make more sense to do it now because you're going in for elections.
True.
Absolutely. We'll take the discussion forward on the interim budget set to be presented at 11 this morning by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, her 6th consecutive budget and the 4th paperless or digital budget to be presented today in India. But we'll take a breather at this point in time. Still to come on DD India News Hour.
Yes, we'll keep getting you all the latest in the build-up to the last budget of the Modi 2.0 government.
And in the special broadcast, we'll also tell you how an interim budget is different from a full-year budget.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome to Kumarakom, Kerala, God's own country.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast on India's interim budget. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be presenting that budget at 11 a.m. India time or 5:30 GMT in the morning. And a lot of expectations around the interim budget, even though the Finance Minister has already tempered expectations. But the question is, will it be a pro-growth budget Again, will attempts be made to strike a balance between growth and fiscal consolidation? Will it be a fiscally prudent budget? What are the sections of the economy that this budget will be catering to? Will it be giving a boost to capital expenditure, crowding in private investment? Will it be giving a boost to the export sector, to defense, to Make in India, to women empowerment? So all of those questions we are exploring in the special broadcast. But for now, let's tell you that the budget will be presented by the Finance Minister, and that will be an interim budget. Like the previous three full union budgets, the interim Budget 2024 will be tabled in a digital format. Find out in our next report how an interim budget is different from a full year budget.
Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be setting a record when she rises to present her sixth budget on February 1st, 2024, a feat achieved so far only by former Prime Minister of India, Morarji Desai. She will surpass the records of her predecessors, Manmohan Singh, Arun Jaitley, P. Chidambaram, Yashwant Sinha, who had presented 5 budgets in a row. But the budget to be presented by Union Finance Minister on 1st of February will actually be an interim budget. Being an interim budget before the approaching general elections, major policy announcements are unlikely. Let's now tell you how an interim budget is different from a full year budget. A budget consists of 2 parts, the income and expenses of the government for the previous year and the expected income and expenses for the coming year. An interim budget also shows the previous year's income and expenses, but it shows only the most basic expenses up until the general election. An interim budget is presented when general elections are very near. It is an effective mechanism that allows the ruling government to ask Parliament for approval of funds sufficient to incur expenditure for part of the year till a new government is formed after the general elections. So an interim budget takes the place of a full budget if general elections are approaching. The full budget for fiscal year 2025 will be presented after the formation of the new government following the general elections. During an election year, it is unrealistic for the ruling government to prepare a full-year budget. Nirmala Sitharaman took over the finance portfolio in Prime Minister Narendra Modi's second term. It will be her 4th paperless budget, as like the previous 3 full union budgets, the interim union budget 2024 will also be tabled in digital mode. Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
So that's the distinction between the interim budget and full budget. And to talk about it further, we still have in our studio Deepshika Sikarwa, Senior Editor, Economic Times, and Narendra Badhwa is also with us, stock analyst. Mr. Badhwa, if I could come for your perspective on the interim budget, as the package that we played out also said, although the convention is that it's a vote on account, but we have precedent where major announcements have been made in 2019 by Piyush Goyal, even for the unorganized sector, apart from farmers and women, and by Pranab Mukherjee when he changed the tax slab. So again, there is something to further that speculation that since it's an election year, something more will come which will give good news to a lot of people in the country.
Yeah, so there is nothing written in the constitution, or it is just a precedent that in the year of election you have to present a vote on account. But nobody can stop. I mean, to have government give the direction to the next government, or their policies, and we feel that, as I have said earlier, a lot of focus will be on capital expenditure and fiscal consolidation, and what they can definitely narrate in this budget, vote on account also. And I think the focus will be same, welfare schemes, more welfare schemes, more money in the hands of the public at large, and especially the rural.
Deepshika, what also comes to mind is the focus on Make in India particularly, and we've seen how in the past import duty decisions have been taken in a manner that you can incentivize domestic manufacturing. There are so many PLI schemes that have been announced. There's so much focus on Make in India, especially in the context of defense as well. So again, do you expect the government to go down the path?
Definitely. I think from whatever has been done, this budget would be building on those measures.
For the consolidation.
For consolidation, and also if there are sectors where manufacturing could be spurred, if they require support,
for instance,
there could be some expansion.
Yeah.
Yes, there could be some expansion of PLIs to, include those sectors. We've seen, there were customs duty changes yesterday for the mobile industry.
Correct.
So while the customs duty changes do not really need to be done in the budget, but government has in the past done so.
But generally, we don't have a part B in the interim budget. As I've seen
because that's all moved to GST now.
Yeah. So,
but customs are not part of GST.
No, customs is not part of GST. It can be done through a notification, the change. So, which government does all the year round. But in the budget, the idea is to do it in a more focused, coherent manner if there are sectors which require some support where we need to support domestic
I'm
manufacturing.
sorry to interrupt you, but we're getting some images right now, live images of the Finance Minister having departed for North Block. That's the Finance Ministry there, where she will be meeting her budget team. All the officials who were involved had to be quarantined as well for a considerable amount of period and did a lot of hard work. God bless them. And we will see what have they come up with. The budget halwa is quite famous, Deepshika. I wonder if you had any of it, but this is also quite a
been so
sweet
lucky,
that one is looking forward to.
Absolutely. So, Finance Minister's cavalcade now arriving at Rashtrapati Bhavan.
No, that's the North Block.
Right, the North Block, and the Rashtrapati Bhavan is just next to it. So that will be the next stop. A meeting with Finance Ministry officials. That's what our correspondent Vikas Sarthi told us. And there you see the first visuals of Finance Minister deboarding her car, entering into her North Block office where India's Finance Ministry is. She'll be meeting with Finance Ministry officials, and there we expect her after that to move to Rashtrapati Bhavan and meet with the President.
Yeah, she looked in a hurry because she didn't stop to wave to the cameras or say something.
Yes, and then we expect after that, she'll be presenting a copy of the budget to the President of India, and from there she'll be headed to the new Parliament with the budget team. And of course, after that, the most important thing will follow, the presentation of the interim budget 2024.
Deepshika, any speculation on what the mood of the Finance Minister conveyed in her general demeanour before she headed in?
She was quite pacey because perhaps it was just drizzling.
Yes, it was. I think she was in a rush to go inside. So I guess it would be an interesting budget.
But she's on schedule, isn't she?
Yeah, she's on schedule, but I think she just likes to be on time. So I think without any delays, she's just rushed. But she said, don't expect any spectacular announcements in the budget already. So she's tried to sort of keep the expectations down. But
she wants to pull a rabbit out of her hat.
Yeah, absolutely, I think it'll be a total surprise for a lot of sections.
And, I was looking at the budget team, and these officials have been around for quite some time, because if you look at Ajay Seth, who's the Revenue Secretary, then Tuhin Kanta Pandey, who is the Department of Economic Affairs Secretary, and there's DPAM Secretary Vivek Joshi. They were there last time around too. The Chief Economic Advisor has been around for a couple of years.
Yes, so
a very experienced team backing the Finance Minister just ahead of the general elections.
Absolutely. This team has been there in place. They did the last budget as well. So there is continuity in those terms.
And that was important in the context of the new tax regime that came in last time. I thought that was an epochal change, because how many times do you have
Absolutely.
a new tax regime?
It is a significant reform, because you're trying to bring in a shift. Historically, we've had...
it came in 2020, and then it became default last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in India, savings have been driven by tax incentives. So, I think now the government wanted to move to a regime where people choose where they want to invest. So I think it is a very significant change. Hopefully there'll be something in the budget today to make it more attractive for its adoption.
Yeah. If I could bring in Narendra Bhadwa again. Narendra Bhadwa, in terms of taxation, again, direct and indirect, a lot of it has moved to GST, but as Munmun pointed out, customs, there is duties, is still within the Finance Minister's domain, and of course direct taxes too within the Finance Minister's domain, and where the market has also been looking at a lot of things, a lot of expectations where LTCG and other taxations on where your investments are concerned. So what are your expectations there?
See, market always look for the continuity and stability in policies. So as far as LTCG and short-term capital gains are concerned, we were expecting last year also some tweaking on the period of holding for especially the equity market side of the long-term capital gain, and being a
the amount is well, it's just 1 lakh right now.
Yeah. So that is going to be there, I think, and what market expect is the stability of, as there is a continuity in the bureaucracy of North Block, and they are experienced people there. So I expect that the tax regime also have stability in policy, and some tweaking on the individual personal taxation of 30%. I expect that it should go down to the 25% level of corporate tax. And this is our submission and submission from the industry. Let us see what will happen.
Diksha, is there ground for that? Because we've seen ever since COVID hit, and after that the market has been surging, and more people, people getting into retail and securities, both stocks, direct stock markets as well as mutual funds, the numbers have been going up. Our fintech firms that have come into this area, they've really grown those numbers. There are apps like Zerodha that have done tremendous business, and they've grown these capital markets hugely. So do you think there is ground to expect that there will be some incentive for people to turn to these kind of investments instead of the conventional ones like property and gold and all that?
See, from what the budget, this budget particularly, I think if there are signals to, if there would be a change in the capital gains tax regime, there's been a lot of discussion around it that we need to reform that tax regime. There have been indicators that there would be some work on that. But I doubt that that kind of a change will come about in this budget. It's a very significant change, and I don't think the government would want to, give any, instability or bring about any instability in the markets at this juncture. So I guess it would be a very long-term signal that, okay, possibly if this reform is coming about. But in terms of investment in the capital markets, I really don't think there would be any kind of investment which would incentive which probably she'd like to bring about. Because it already has established itself as an investment avenue for investors. It's being lapped up by investors. Absolutely.
Yeah, one cannot forget Nari Shakti here, because I thought reading between the lines, the Prime Minister did hint somewhere that this
at least you two should
could be a Nari Shakti interim budget, but the less the said about it right now, the better in terms of expectations. But again, we've seen the imprint of Nari Shakti all through the 26th of January this year, India's 75th Republic Day. So for women's empowerment, what do you expect?
Absolutely. If you saw the president's speech also, Nari Shakti is definitely there, all in between the, if you read in between the lines. So definitely, I mean, there is an expectation of government doing some form of, unveiling some kind of a support measure for Nari Shakti.
The advisories just given as to how women should be given more precedence in the workforce just 3 days back.
Absolutely. So I think the all-round effort is to, and Prime Minister's already laid down, the forecast, FM's also said. So there would be measures for all those 4 pillars which the government has identified. And definitely, if you're looking at development and economic growth, you have to talk about, your half the population. Unless they are empowered and they become part of the workforce, your economy cannot be lifted. So I think those measures definitely are coming. It could be in form of cash transferred. It could be in form of, more tax incentive to employ people. We cannot say right now. These are all speculations, but
there's been a lot of commentary on the workforce participation rate as well for women.
Yes.
And there is a need to address that?
Absolutely. It has grown over the years, but definitely we really need to, if you look at the global standards, we still are behind. So if we have to lift India's economy, then the women have to become part of the workforce.
Oh, absolutely. So let's get more ground perspective now. Shama Mishra, correspondent, is joining us from Mumbai. Shama, Tell us about industry's expectations. Mumbai is the financial capital. That is the place where the stock markets are. So how is Mumbai, particularly as a financial capital, looking forward to the budget?
Another 24 minutes to go for the markets to open.
Right, Munmun, as you've mentioned that, Mumbai is the financial capital, and you've also mentioned about the stock markets. So once the announcement begins of the budget, of the interim budget, we will get to know how they're liking, how the stock markets are actually liking the budget announcements. That said, we also have to speak about the expectations. We are going to separate this into two parts, wherein we'll also speak about the expectations of a common man and expectations of the industry. While we spoke about the common man, we've spoken to them, the salaried class. They always expect in the same tune that there should be some tax relief for them. They are expecting that there should be an increase in the standard deduction limit and also an attractive tax regime that will help them in benefits for the tax. Apart from that, they are also expecting that there will be some policies introduced.
Chief Economic Advisor live, just go across to him. Former Chief Economic Advisor.
कमी आई है और इससे जो फेडरल रिजर्व ले लें या फिर जो ईसीबी जो यूरोप में सेंट्रल बैंक है उन्होंने मेरा अनुमान है कि वो जो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स हैं वो कम करेंगी और इंटरेस्ट रेट्स कम करने से जो हमारे मतलब जो एडवांस नेशंस होते हैं विकसित देशों में उनमें कंजम्पशन और इन्वेस्टमेंट दोनों जो हैं इंटरेस्ट रेट्स पे काफ़ी निर्भर करता है। भारत में जैसे कि इन्वेस्टमेंट इंटरेस्ट रेट्स पे निर्भर करता है, कंजम्पशन उतना ज़्यादा नहीं, लेकिन विकसित देशों में दोनों कंजम्पशन और इन्वेस्टमेंट तो क्योंकि इन्फ्लेशन कम होने की संभावना है और इंटरेस्ट रेट्स जो है कम होंगी तो इन्वेस्टमेंट और कंजम्पशन थोड़ी बेहतर रहेगी, इसीलिए जो रेजिलियंस है वो दिख रहा है।
सर, इंडिया के लिए बहुत खुशखबरी दी है, आईएमएफ ने बोला है कि बहुत अच्छा परफॉर्म करेगा इंडिया, ब्राइटर स्पॉट है, बाकी कंट्री
will continue to be on investment and consumption, he's saying, and he is somebody who has a lot of experience in preparing the economic surveys in the past because he was the Chief Economic Advisor of India for a few years, even during the COVID years for that matter. So he has that sort of a perspective on the interim budget. And Deepshika, on the defense sector, we've seen the defense exports have gone up and they are at an all-time high at this point in time. But India is also making a lot of acquisitions at the same time, and you need to budget for that. There's Rafale marine aircraft that India is looking at as far as purchasing from France is concerned. There are submarines, and there's a lot more in terms of acquisitions. So again, a defense budget cannot be pared down.
Yes,
it can only go up,
no,
isn't it?
Defense budget, of course, will go up, and I think it has maintained a consistent pace over the past years. And, every finance minister, I think there is a clear indication or clear diktat which comes that if when any requirement comes about, there is always money for defense. If an acquisition has to be made, money would be provided. So while there's been a consistent increase in the defense expenditure over the past few years, if there is an acquisition coming about, those additional funds would be provided as and when they are needed. So I think.
Let me bring in Mr. Wadhwa as well on this. Mr. Wadhwa, again, if you look at the stock markets, defense stocks, they've been going stratospheric. I mean, one of the IPO allotments that I've had is BDL, and that's the highest gaining IPO allotment I've ever had in my portfolio. So what can you tell us about how defense stocks are likely to behave once the budget is announced?
See, what we have seen last year, wherever there was a divestment or, offering by the government on defense stocks, especially government held these units, people have made a lot of money. And going forward, I think a lot of divestment on that sector, divestment on the public units, and especially the defense stocks. As we have gone inward and we are trying to have PLI scheme on defense sector and a lot of manufacturing to happen in India, the huge scope for defense sector as such for the capital market. As you have said, you have made good allotment, you got a good allotment and made good money. So is with everyone in the markets. And people are looking for such opportunities from the new companies, especially in the defense sector or railways or the public infrastructure or primary sector where there's going to be huge investment and people will make a lot of money in those sectors.
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, it's unrealized profit. I haven't really cashed in on it. It's still there.
Right. Mr. Wadhwa, on a policy perspective, since we are discussing disinvestment, we know that year on year we miss targets of disinvestment, and there has been a view from the Indian industry that perhaps you could look at a more medium-term outlook going forward instead of having, annual disinvestment targets, going for a 3-year disinvestment roadmap. What do you think about it? Should there be a more medium-term outlook than an annual one?
Yeah, although we are missing all our budgeted divestment targets, but I think that is a way to go. A lot of companies government is sitting on, and people are eager to grab those companies or grab shares of those companies. So good opportunities for government also, as the markets are booming, and this is the right time to divest, and very easy to reach to those targets which we have given in the earlier years also and in the coming years also.
And I think there's a way to put a positive spin on this as well, since government is doing well on other revenue fronts. There's not that much pressure really to
and a lot really goes into a successful disinvestment at the same time. It is a very time-consuming process, and you need to tick all the right boxes. Well, we'll leave it at that, Mr. Wadhwa. Thank you so much for joining us. Deepshika will continue to be here, but the presenters will change in just a bit, and we'll be back later in the day. The rolling special coverage on India's interim budget continues. We'll take a breather.
Munmun's taking a breather. I'll still be around to stick with me. And our colleague who will be joining me, I think it'll be Anil. In just a bit, stay with DD India.